Greetings and welcome. This is the third video of CBV Institute's three-part succession planning video series. Today, we will focus on how CBVs can work with other trusted advisors on a business owner's succession planning team, including lawyers, wealth advisors, estate groups, and bankers. Joining me today is Amanda Vella. Amanda is a CPA as well as a Chartered Business Valuator, or CBV. Amanda is the Managing Director of Business Consulting at ATB Financial. She's focused on providing tailored advice to clients on business valuation, value acceleration, effective exit strategies, and long-term financial preparation for a business transaction. Amanda brings more than 18 years of specialized experience in finance leadership, business advisory, strategic and financial planning, corporate finance, and executive coaching to her practice. Amanda, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Amanda, before we kick things off, I think it would be helpful if you could set the stage somewhat and share your experience with succession planning engagements.
For sure. So I started this role almost 3 years ago now, around COVID. And really what we wanted to do was help business owners come up with a succession plan. We knew our business owner clients were aging. I sit in the wealth business. So we see that, and we also saw that they did not have a way to exit their business, and we knew most of their wealth was trapped in it. So we really wanted to help our clients find effective ways to get the wealth out of their business, at the same time, get them and their family prepared for an exit and get the personal financial planning in place that's unnecessary in these situations.
Thank you, Amanda. So one of the reasons, the reason I'm excited to be speaking with you today is because succession planning is such a hot topic in Canada right now, as you are well aware. A recent study by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, or CFIB, indicated that over 70% of business owners are planning on exiting their business in the coming decade. And that means that over $2 trillion worth of business assets could change hands during that period. So that statistic in and of itself is mind-blowing to me. But the study also reports that only 1 in 10 business owners have a formal succession plan in place, and that 84% of business owners noted that it was somewhat or very difficult to determine the value of their business.
Yeah, and I think as business advisors, whether you are a banker, accountant, lawyer, wealth advisor, if you are that trusted person for a business owner, I think it's really important that you bring up succession planning and ask if they have a plan in place. Now, my experience from doing this, that can be a very difficult topic to bring it up, especially with aging business owners. We're finding with the baby boomers, their identity is really tied to their business. And, they think of it as their baby. And to ask them to think of somebody else owning their baby, running their baby, is a really emotional task. Mm-hmm. So I do warn that these can be tough conversations, but I think they're still important to have. And if a business owner does bring it up in the littlest way, it's important to drive that home and get them the help right away, because they get very busy running their business and the day-to-day takes over, and suddenly the succession plan goes on the back burner again. I also think it's important to know that it's not just the business owner that's at risk here. If they don't have a succession plan in place, something catastrophic can happen. That can be detrimental to the business. So it's the family's wealth that's at stake. It's the employees that work for that business. So although they're difficult conversations to have, I really encourage advisors to still have them with their clients.
Those are great points. The need to, identify and address the emotional impact of succession planning is crucial, and I imagine occasionally takes a backseat to the business side of things. Now, to start off, can you speak about how CBVs can bring value to a succession planning team in general?
Yeah, I think what's nice is that we are that independent resource coming in and providing valuable information that's needed in a succession plan. So as I mentioned, the whole topic of a full succession plan can be overwhelming for a business owner, but taking that next first step can be easy. And that's where I think a business valuation is an easy next first step that you can introduce to your business owner to at least get better information of where you are today. What do you need for wealth to retire? Where do you need to go? What's the state of the business? Is it saleable? So you're going to get some of that information from a business valuator that's involved. And the nice part of what we do when we do a business valuation is we're really looking for those risks in the business. Like, what is detrimental to the value? Where's the owner dependence? We call it personal goodwill, but what is really dependent on the business owner today? And we can provide that advice so that the business owner has time to really correct some of those things and be in a much better state when they are ready to transition. And we can also see maybe where the next best advisor to bring to the table is. We are well connected with all of the advisors we talked about, bankers, tax professionals, estate planners, so we can bring the next advisor to the table to keep the process going and make it a little less daunting than thinking of, I need a full succession plan tomorrow.
Thank you. And maybe with specifically with respect to business owners, how do CBVs interact with business owners with respect to succession planning?
Yeah, so we work with them to try to come up with obviously the value of the business, but to do that, we really need to understand a lot of the details about their business. Where do they see it going? What are the financials to date? What do we expect in the future? Where's the industry going? How's the relationship with their employees, their suppliers? We need to become experts on everything going on in that business to really understand, what makes it drive at the end of the day and what makes it valuable.
Great, thank you. Now, we've talked a bit about how CBVs can work with business owners. And there's many potential trusted advisors on a succession planning team. Maybe now you can speak to how CBVs can work with the other trusted advisors on a succession planning team. Our second video touched on how CBVs work with CPAs, but maybe you can speak to the other types of professionals.
Yeah, so I think what's underestimated sometimes is the value we can have on a wealth plan. As I mentioned, we know for business owners, oftentimes for years, they're putting all their money into their business, which results in 80% of their wealth is often tied up in their business. Mm-hmm. And when we think about doing a wealth plan and do we have enough to retire? Do we have enough to sustain us through those years? It's really important that the variable that we put into that plan around the business value is accurate. And oftentimes what we do is, or what wealth advisors will do, is ask the business owner what the value of their business is. And those that have been in this profession and worked with business owners, we know probably like 95% of the time, they're going to say that business is more valuable than an outside person would say. And that's because they're so close to it. Like we said, it is their baby, that they don't see some of the warts that an external person might see. So if they create a wealth plan that has that inflated value in it, they could find themselves short when they hit their retirement years. Right. The other thing is sometimes they'll pull retained earnings or other shortcuts that really is detrimental to having a great wealth plan. So I think CBVs add tremendous value to the wealth profession and providing their clients a much more accurate retirement plan. Then lawyers, we work a lot in valuing, and a lot of CBVs specialize in litigation. So we can see where the troubles happen later on, if you don't have a shareholder agreement right, if you don't have good valuation things considered when you put those together. So we can act as advisors in a transaction to really make sure those things are considered up front and put in writing in a way that prevents future litigation, future challenges from a business valuator perspective. Tax advisors, this is becoming bigger and bigger as we know this big bubble is coming with all the baby boomers retiring and all these businesses hitting the market. And we're seeing a lot more tax planning strategies come out from the government that involve a business valuation so that you can more effectively transition to family and your management teams. So obviously the first one is family, and if Bill C-208 came into place, offering provisions so that you could transfer to your children and now get the capital gains exemption. Mm-hmm. With that, though, you do need a valuation done. And of course, CBVs are a great resource to do that. And this latest budget added another addition to it so that employee trusts are coming more into the picture in Canada. They're very big in the States, but haven't been utilized in Canada because there wasn't a lot of tax strategies to support them. So again, when you're dealing with a management team and a business owner transition, you want that trust to be maintained, and having an independent valuation done to support what the transition price will be is really helpful in those situations. We're also seeing a lot of older shareholder agreements have some interesting valuation terms in them that may not actually be representative of fair market value. And CRA has been cracking down on that a bit. We've seen some recent cases where if that is the determination of fair market value and is used when they file their tax returns, CRA may come back and say, no, that's not actually fair market value. That's an equation, a formula, but you really need a calculation of what fair market value is today, which a CBV can provide and prevent you from having, tax penalties or other things come up later on in the transaction. So I think we're a huge supporter for tax professionals and making sure those returns are correct. The other interesting area that we're seeing CBVs in the space come out a lot more is within banking. As businesses shift, and we're seeing COVID shift, where we may have less hard assets, we may have less buildings, less equipment. IT is becoming a more predominant resource in our businesses. So we are losing some of that hard capital asset that lenders like to lend on, and intangibles are becoming a bigger part of the balance sheet for these businesses. So that's where we can provide bankers and creditors some extra assurance by having a business valuation in place as to what the full value of the business is when you consider intangible assets and goodwill. So I think there's lots of advantages for us working together as a team. And I do want to iterate that a great succession plan is really a team approach. You need all of these people at the table and working collaboratively to have a really great succession.
Thanks. Those are all great points. Now, we've talked about a CBV, CPA, wealth advisors, lawyers, tax advisors, bankers. So there's a number of professionals who could be assisting a business owner on their succession planning team. Do you have any thoughts on who should be leading that team? If there's so many players, I would imagine that someone needs to be the point person or the team lead to make sure that goals and objectives are being met along the way.
Yeah, it does certainly help. Like I said, it's easy for business owners to become overwhelmed, and we don't want them to stop running their business. That's the last thing that, if the business loses value as part of the transaction, that's never a good thing. So we want to make sure the business owner stays focused on running the business and doing what they do well. But yes, there are a lot of advisors that need to come to the table, and that's where we're seeing a predominant increase in exit planning advisors, people like myself that specialize in bringing the right people to the table at the right times. And we're seeing CBVs often leading that because of, as I mentioned, we are used to working with all these advisors. We're used to seeing the bigger picture as to what's going on and know when to bring the right professionals in and at the right time so that we don't overwhelm the business owner in the process.
Yeah, and I think just to add, I think CBVs definitely bring a multidisciplinary perspective or lens to the process.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think you've touched on it a few different times with respect to, the emotions and some of the tax scenarios that business owners might be up against, but maybe you can speak more into what are the potential pitfalls involved in succession planning? What should be done to mitigate risk essentially for the business owner?
Yeah, I haven't touched on it yet, but I think there is this assumption sometimes with business owners that when we're ready to sell, we'll just put it on the market and it'll be sold tomorrow. And that's not really how the process works. Mm-hmm. What we do know is many businesses are not operating in a state where they are saleable, where you can actually transfer to somebody else. There's too much dependence on the business owner. There's other things that would scare a buyer away. So it does take time to prepare, clean it up, make sure it's ready for sale. So I think it's important for business owners to realize that only about 20% of businesses that go on the market sell at the first time. So the more you can do to make yourself prepared and ready and make your business as attractive as possible, you'll increase the odds that you won't have to go through that process again. And I think that's important to realize that, this can take years, especially you want to start well in advance. If you have tax planning strategies to put in place, like you need to purify your business so that you can use your capital gains exemptions. Some family transactions, you want to use an estate freeze. So getting that tax planning years in advance is important. And then that can lead into what are some of the things operationally that we should fix or improve so that we have, one, a saleable business, two, we get the most valuable possible when we do decide to sell. And doing that work well in advance keeps your options open in case something unexpected happens. We also know that only about 20% of the businesses sell on the owner's timeline. Unfortunately, many businesses sell as a result of a death, dispute, disability, or divorce. So there's a lot of reasons that businesses transact, and we want more business owners to be able to transact on their timeline. And if something unexpected happens, that the business is in a state that it can transfer and the wealth can be maintained and it still operates. So that would be my thing. Start as early as possible. Keep your business operating in that saleable state. You keep your options open. You keep your business running as valuable as possible. On the flip side, when we deal with some of the family transitions, that can add a little bit of extra complexity. And I think it's important that assumptions aren't made with families. Sometimes we assume the kids will take over, or we assume they want the business. And it's important to have, again, those are difficult conversations, but that we have all the parties at the table. And if the kids are younger and we're not sure if they're going to take over, really setting that business up that it could transition in a variety of ways, but we know that it's operating in that great state. The other thing we sometimes see, especially in farm transitions or other business, really smaller family businesses, is this idea of really wanting equitable transition and making sure that all the kids get equal shares in the business or all the kids get equal parts in the farm, which if they aren't involved in the day-to-day can actually create a lot of problems. And that's where we work with a lot of estate professionals and what else is in the estate of the family, that maybe the business is just left to those operating in the business and then something else is left to the rest of the children, to make sure the business can stay operational and you're not creating headaches for those children that are still trying to run the business.
Thanks, Amanda. Those are great points. So I think what I'm hearing is that there's several reasons why someone would want to start their succession planning journey earlier rather than later. And it's from a regulatory point of view, there may be specific timelines that you need to work within or around for tax purposes. From an operational point of view, you may need to clean up the business, show trends of increasing profitability or whatnot, transition customers and vendors to key employees, so that the business is out of the owner's head and into the heads of any potential successors or continuing employees. And then I think the last point is when you were talking about, an owner's particular family situation, it can be messy. Succession planning can be messy. So it does take time to work through, all three of those aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one other point I want to hit on is that there's a life after transition. And I think that often gets missed in this process and understanding that business owners have been involved in the business probably 50, 60 hours a week. It was everything to them. It brought them a lot of things. It probably brought meaning, purpose. That they may be concerned about what's their legacy when they do this. And that's what stops a lot of business owners from doing this process in the first place, is that they don't want to lose those things in their lives. And we know stats say roughly 90% of business owners profoundly regret selling their business in 1 year. And I think what happens there is there's some time to recover from the transition. Like I said, it's more onerous than most people think. And that's an important stage. And then there's time to spend more time with your family and go golfing, do those things you wanted to do. And about the year mark, that starts to wear out and you start to wonder what gives you meaning and purpose now. So that's an important thing that we do with our business owners as well, is really what's your life after business and plan. Maybe you want to do some charitable work. Maybe you want to sit on a board. Maybe you want to be advisor to younger business owners. So there's things you can do that give you meaning and purpose, that keep you engaged, that maybe not engaged at 50, 60 hours a week. And we think those are important to really have a successful transition, to really have something in place to give you whatever that business was giving you in your life outside of just income and wealth.
That's a great point. And it's certainly, as I'm speaking to different professionals involved in succession planning, it's certainly clear that it is a process. And there's, yes, the active process of transitioning your business assets, but so much work is done before that point, and there's a lot of work to do after that point. So that's a really important point for business owners and any of their trusted advisors to be aware of. So finally, I think, this type of work that you do is so multifaceted and interesting. And I think that our viewers would be really interested in learning more from you on a more, direct level. Do you have any stories of any engagements or files or work that you've done that resulted in either a good news story or maybe a horror story that you can share with us?
Maybe I'll start on the bad side so we can maybe end on a more positive note. But really what got me into this work was back when I did more business valuation and M&A transactions, was helping a business owner sell his business. And at the end of the day, we couldn't sell the business. And when the business owner came to us, he was exhausted, tired, wit's end, had nothing left to give. He did a lot of the right things. 2 years prior, he went to his accountants, put a great tax strategy in place that would ensure he could use his capital gains exemption. And he thought that was all he needed to do. And that's why I think these conversations are important. But what was really happening is there was severe owner dependence. He was answering the phone all hours of the night. The financial systems and the data records weren't there to give buyers a lot of comfort. There were some hidden tax liabilities in the business. So all of these things at the end of the day scared the buyers away. And I think with that advice and really asking, what can I do to improve my business a couple of years in advance, these things could have been addressed, fixed, and increase the likelihood of a saleable business at the end of the day. Now, on the good news side, what we're finding from this work we're doing is a lot of younger business owners have a different relationship with their business. And I think that's what's contributing to so many businesses when you think of exiting, that the numbers are going up. They're beyond the baby boomers now. And I think the younger generation is doing this work and has more of a 5 to 10 year exit strategy in mind. They start to grow and become overwhelmed with the business, and they want more of work-life balance. They want more time with their family. And sometimes they come to us thinking, exit's my only option. And those are a lot of fun to work with, because we can work with the business owner to put the systems in place to handle the growth, to get a great team around them, to get the processes documented, to get everything off of their plate and in more hands of the business, which at the end of the day makes it more valuable. They get the work-life balance back. They are happier, and they have more years in that business to grow the wealth for their family. And seeing those stories and seeing them happy and in love with their business again is great. And that's the neat part about my role. And so I'm not dependent on the business to sell. We want to make sure that it's saleable and it's operating in the best state possible. But then the options are open to the business owner. If they want to keep it 5-10 years, then it's safe to do so, because we've addressed any of the risks if something were to happen to them.
That's great. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. It was uncovering the options that are available to the business owner, and perhaps walking them through what could potentially be the best options for them and their family and other stakeholders, which is hugely, valuable to everyone involved. Amanda, thank you again for your time and expertise. It's much appreciated. To our viewers, if you're interested in learning more about what CBVs do, or if you're interested in hiring a CBV to join or lead your succession planning team, see the information at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.